Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here for another installment of our NEMO Stormwater Seminar Series. I'm here with one of our stormwater experts, Dr. Chris Obropta of the Rutgers Cooperative Extension, and today he will be sharing a presentation on identifying green infrastructure opportunities and projects in your town. So without further ado, thank you for being here, Chris.
Thanks, Avery. Okay, so we're going to run through this pretty quick. The whole goal of this is to really talk a little bit about stormwater basics, what green infrastructure is, talk about the different practices that we tend to focus on when we're looking to retrofit existing development with green infrastructure, and then how do we actually select the site. So stormwater basics, what we're really trying to focus on here is green infrastructure is really meant to control smaller storms. So usually we design these up to the 2-year storm, which is about 3.3 inches of rain over 24 hours. So if you're looking for these to control hurricanes and nor'easters that we may get, the systems have to be designed a little bit differently, a little bit bigger, well, a lot bigger. And sometimes they're coupled with some gray infrastructure where you have some underground storage and things like that. So just so you understand the limitations of this, I think that's important. So we're talking about stormwater runoff today. So whenever it rains or snow melts, that water travels across the surface, picks up pollution, and carries it to our waterways. Because we have a lot of impervious surfaces, more stormwater tends to run off in New Jersey. So a natural condition like a wooded forested condition, we would normally get about 10% stormwater runoff on an annual basis. So we get about 45 inches of rain a year. So about 4.5 inches of rain would run off of that area during normal conditions. So you start adding houses, single family homes, 1 to 2 acre lots, you get about 20% runoff. You start adding houses on smaller lots, quarter acre, half acre lots, about 30% runoff. And then you have like downtown, more urban areas, you get about 55% runoff. So the more impervious surfaces we add, the more stormwater runoff you get. An impervious surface is any surface that water doesn't pass through. So it's the roadway, it's the roof of the building, the sidewalks, the driveways, things like that. So today we're talking about green infrastructure and how we can use that to better manage stormwater. Green infrastructure is a fairly new approach to managing stormwater runoff. The idea is that instead of putting the basin at the bottom of the hill and having one big basin to capture all the water from development, now you're going to scatter smaller systems throughout the entire development and capture stormwater closer to its source. So the idea is you're going to put things near the end of the downspout or near the end of the driveway to capture that water before it's able to travel across the land and pick up pollution and make its way down the hill. So these projects will capture water, filter the water, absorb the water, get it back into the ground. And there's also green infrastructure practices that allow you to reuse the water, to harvest the water. We think about green infrastructure practices, and there's really 5 functions that they typically serve. Not all practices have all 5 functions, but some do and some don't. But every practice will have at least one of these functions that it does. So many of the practices will infiltrate water into the ground. So they'll collect the water and let it soak back into the ground. Many practices will filter water. So they'll clean the water as it's making its way into the ground or as it's running through the practice. Some of the practices will store water, hold water for either reuse or just store for extended periods of time. So it can evaporate and go back into the atmosphere. There's evaporation. So practices have plants in it and ponding area. So you do have evaporation from those ponding areas. You do have transpiration where the plants are taking up the water and transpiring it back through its leaves back into the atmosphere. So these are the processes that we think about when we think about green infrastructure. These are the practices we think about when we think about green infrastructure. Now, we have these listed in a way that we often think about them when we're looking at a site. So one of the first things we look for is there an opportunity to use some bioretention? I'll go through these in a little bit more detail in a minute. But bioretention systems, which are often considered rain gardens or bioswales, and there's a few others here. Permeable pavements, another one. Rainwater harvesting is another system that we commonly use in New Jersey. And then there's dry wells, which is also pretty common in New Jersey. And then there's rooftop systems like green roofs and blue roofs, which are not very common in our state and tend to be much more expensive when we're thinking about using them to retrofit existing development. So here's an example of a rain garden. This is taking runoff from the roadway. It's just a shallow landscape depression designed to capture stormwater, hold the water, and slowly let the water seep into the ground. It's planted with native plants. usually fills with between 3 inches to 12 inches of water during the storm, and then quickly that water will infiltrate into the soil underneath. Um, Here's a cross section of a rain garden. You can see we do have a bioretention soil mix in there. So we use a special soil mix to allow the plants to grow and to promote infiltration. As the water moves through the mulch layer into that soil mix, eventually it makes its way into the ground. You can see this cross section shows an under drain in it. So that's a perforated pipe surrounded by stone. So water can also get into the under drain pipe, and under drain pipe can carry it away to the river or to a stormwater inlet someplace else. A lot of times you want to design these without under drains so that water can just go into the ground. You can also see there's an outflow structure there. So once it gets more than the designed ponding depth, which may be 6 or 12 inches, it'll go into that pipe and go out and bypass the system. Here's some pictures of some rain gardens. What's nice about these is we can squeeze this into any existing landscape, parking lot islands, schools, libraries. The one picture in the middle is an abandoned gas station in Camden that we made into a rain garden park. Here's another closer picture of that. We like showing this picture because you can see we're getting water from the roadway through a channel under the sidewalk with a steel grate on top, and that waterway from the roadway goes into this rain garden cell and will slowly seep into the ground. If you get too much water in it, you'll see in the center of the picture there's a drain, an atrium drain. So once water gets to a certain level, it'll go into that drain, and that drain will take that water to one of the other 3 gardens that are on the site. So there's actually 4 gardens that were built here to work together. Here's another picture of one. This is Chris Perez, one of our landscape architects here at Rutgers, who works on these projects quite often. In this case, we've excavated out the depression to capture stormwater, and in an effort not to have to haul the soil off site, we used the soil and mounded it up to give the area a little bit of contour relief. One of the biggest expenses with the rain garden is you're going to excavate down, 12 or 24 inches, maybe put in some good soil, that bioretention mix. But you have to get rid of that soil you're excavating out and haul it away, and that's an expense. In this case, we were able to use it on site and blend it into the existing landscape. So we still have our depression, but we also didn't have to haul the soil away. Here's a rain garden we built at a school. We used the actual existing inlet. So what happens is this was a lawn inlet. We dug down around the inlet about 6 inches deep. When we get 6 inches of water, they'll sit in this rain garden, slowly seep into the ground. When we get 7 inches of water, overflow into that inlet, that catch basin that you see in the center of the slide, and that'll take the water away. So we're using the existing infrastructure as the overflow. And this is taking roof runoff. The 2 pipes that are coming in out of the building are pipes from the rooftop. Here's one of the library. We like showing this picture. It's a much it's a less natural garden. It's a little bit cleaner, more discreet plants with mulch around them, lots of pollinators, beautiful river birch there. So these can be very, very attractive. Another type of bioretention system is the bioswale. So the word swale is just a nice word for ditch, and bio means life. So it's a ditch with life in it. And the idea is water goes into this and travels from one location to another. So the idea with a bioswale, it still does infiltrate water, but it's really a conveyance mechanism to convey water from one location to another. So instead of using a concrete pipe, we can use a bioswale, and we can filter the water as it travels through it. Most of these are used along roadsides. You can see them here, and that's pretty common. Another type of bioretention is stormwater planters. These are much more structurally oriented features. You find these in very urban areas, built into the existing sidewalk. So instead of having 10 feet of sidewalk, you have 5 feet of sidewalk and 5 foot of the stormwater planter. It's taking road runoff. It's also taking sidewalk runoff. It has plants in it, seeps into the ground. This one actually shows some stone underneath with an under drain in it. But the idea is we're going to capture water in here and let it filter into the ground. These are a little bit more expensive than a lot of the other systems because they do have the concrete walls on it. So you spend a little bit more. Plus, you're working in a very urban area, and that costs a little bit more money to try to maneuver and construct things in that kind of environment. And here's some pictures of them. What's really nice about this is when a person gets out of the car, they have that nice brick walkway to stand on. They don't actually fall into the planter box. And you can see they do have the grates there where water's coming in from the road through a concrete channel with a grate over top so nobody falls in it. And once again, this fills up with water, and infiltrates the water into the ground. Here's another picture of one. Curb extensions, very similar to this. We also call these curb bump outs. But instead of, removing a piece of the sidewalk and keeping it on the sidewalk, we're bumping it out into the road. So we see a lot of these at intersections. It helps slow down traffic. So it provides traffic calming. But as the water's traveling from the center of the road to the curb and going along the curb, it goes into this curb extension, this basically rain guard in the box. It'll fill up with water. When it's filled with water, no more water can go in. It'll bypass it and go down to the next corner, to the next curb extension, or to an inlet and be carried away. What's nice about this is it also opens up those areas around the intersection so people can see pedestrians a little bit better, see vehicle traffic a little bit better. So it helps reduce accidents in the city. Permeable pavement is one of our favorite practices. It's usually the second on the list we go to. Usually we look at bioretention, then we go to permeable pavement. And the reason for that is permeable pavement is more expensive. So instead of using traditional asphalt, we would use a porous asphalt that has very coarse material. Water goes right through the asphalt into a stone layer underneath. In this example, you can see the parking spots are done in the porous asphalt, where the cartway where the cars pull in and out of is regular asphalt. The water flows from the regular asphalt onto the porous asphalt and infiltrates into the ground. You can see there's different types of permeable pavement. There's a porous asphalt. There's a pervious concrete, which the fellow in the upper left-hand corner is holding a piece of. Water's passing right through the concrete. There's grass pavers, and there's also permeable paving systems where you have the paving stones. This is a nice cross-section of it, and you can see the cars parked on the porous asphalt. Water goes right through the asphalt into that stone layer. Depending on how much water you want to store, it tells you how deep you want that stone layer to be. Usually it's anywhere between 6 to 12 inches. If you want to store bigger storms, it could be as deep as 3 or 4 feet. And the idea is that water will fill up the stone in that voids and slowly percolate into the ground. Because the asphalt breathes better than regular asphalt, it doesn't have the fine material in it. It helps reduce the heat island effect that we have in cities. It doesn't heat up as much. It also cleans the water as it's passing through the stone layer, so you remove a lot of pollutants. The other thing that happens is when it freezes, when there's snow and you plow snow on this, plow snow up in the corner of the parking lot, the snow melts during the day. That melted water goes onto the parking lot and will flash freeze and cause black ice. You don't get that with porous asphalt because as soon as the water hits the parking lot, it infiltrates through the asphalt into the stone layer. So it prevents that black ice from occurring. And we'll see a lot of that black ice coming up over the next couple of days here, I think, in New Jersey. And you can see here's an example of what we did in Clark at the municipal building. Once again, the cartway itself is regular asphalt. You can see it's all shiny with water on it. And the parking spots are porous asphalt. You can see there's no standing water on that at all. All is infiltrated through the system. Here's some pervious concrete. The only problem with pervious concrete is that you really can't salt it the first year, and when you do salt it after that, it's minimal salt because the salt will eat away the surface and turn that to dust, and it'll clog it up. So you have to be just very careful about how you maintain this in the winter. Permeable pavers are beautiful. They tend to be a lot more expensive. You also only get infiltration between the slots between the blocks, so you get a little bit. Water goes into the system a little bit slower, but they're still very effective systems. And then we have grass pavers here. This is a brand called Turf Stone. These are 1 foot by 2 foot concrete blocks that are 4 inches thick with diamonds cut out of the middle of them. So you dig down, put in 6 inches of stone, lay these blocks on top of the stone, and then you can fill the blocks with soil and grass seed, or you can fill those blocks with another fine stone and let it go, let water go through that. This does a great job at managing stormwater. Plus, this is very sturdy, can hold up a fire truck. We use a lot of these in emergency access lanes. So the last system I really want to talk a lot about is rainwater harvesting. New Jersey is a water-rich state, so we don't really have a need to harvest a lot of rainwater. But as climate continues to change, we're going to get more intense storm events followed by longer dry periods. So, for example, we may get a heavy rainfall today, and then it may go 2 weeks without another rainfall. So there's an opportunity to harvest that rain when it comes and reuse it. So you can see one of the common ways to harvest rain is with a rain barrel. A lot of homeowners have these. These are great for watering plants. They don't do a lot for stormwater management because they're a very small system. These cisterns are much better. The one in the lower right-hand corner is one we built in Clark at the municipal building. I'm sorry, at the Public Works building. And we take roof runoff from the Public Works building, fills this tank up. And then we have a pump that's hooked up to this, and they use this for a nonprofit car wash. So they're actually using the rainwater to do a nonprofit car wash in this town. And it's really a great thing. The scouts or the cheerleaders or the baseball team, whoever it is who wants to do a fundraiser, can come to this site and actually use this rainwater to do that. Here's one that we had put in, I believe this is Newark, harvesting rainwater from an adjacent rooftop. This is a community garden site. Ultimately, they're going to be using this water to water community gardens. You see the pipe that's coming out of the top of the barrel with the stone at the end of it. There's going to be a rain garden there. So when the barrel fills up, they can't take any more water. The excess water will go through that pipe and fill a rain garden, so it'll infiltrate into the ground. What's nice about this is this vacant lot. If they ever go to build on it, we can drain this cistern down, unhook the pipes, draw it on the back of a pickup truck, and take it to the next vacant lot. So we never really lose the infrastructure. We can keep reusing it from lot to lot. Here's another one in Patterson. Here's one with our county agent, Amy Rowe from Essex and Passaic County. This is called a slimline system. It's about 21 to 24 inches thick, so it can sit against a wall, doesn't have to take up a lot of sidewalk space. So these are really nice. That'll hold about 530 gallons of stormwater. So the big thing that we're thinking about is how do we select sites for where this stuff is going to go. What makes a good site is what we initially think about. We like sites where there's a lot of impervious surface that are directly connected. So in other words, a site where the downspout is being piped to the road, or where the sidewalk is going down to the road, and all that water is going directly from the impervious surface right into the catch basin, right into the stream. What we want to do is we want to disconnect that. We're going to capture that water, maybe put it in a rain garden, maybe put it in porous pavement, maybe harvest it in a rainwater harvesting system. So we look for these impervious surfaces that are directly connected. We like sites where there's lawn area where we might be able to put in a rain garden or some sort of bioretention system. We often look for sites that have high visibility because we're really trying to get more people to take these approaches. So they provide good educational opportunities. We like to put these in watersheds that are impaired. That's very important to us because we're trying to fix water quality. Most of the waterways in New Jersey are impaired, so we don't have to worry too much about that one. Publicly owned land is also nice to work on because you don't have to deal with either the mayor or the school board, depending on where you're putting it. When you start working in private developments, you have to get a lot of property owners buy-in, and sometimes that could be a little bit more difficult. We like sites where there's a lot of project partners who can help us communicate the effort to the community and educate the community, maybe help us build the practice, put the plants in, maybe even help us maintain it in the future. So what we typically do is we look for sites. These are our go-to sites where we know green infrastructure can often be used. Schools, places of worship, public libraries, the municipal building, public works buildings, firehouses, great place to harvest water, to washing the fire trucks. Post offices, now they're federal facilities, but a lot of them are on town-owned property, so there's still an opportunity to do something there. And then these community organizations like the Elks or Moose Lodge, these folks are always looking for projects around Earth Day. It's great if we can do something on their property to better manage stormwater. And then there's a lot of parks or recreational fields that have a lot of pavement, a lot of rooftops, a lot of sites that can be managed. So what we typically do is we go to a town and we look for these sites. We'll Google it, and then we'll take the aerial photograph of the site. We'll drop it into a PowerPoint, and then we'll actually go outside and go to visit the site and see where the opportunities are. So here's an example of one. This is Yarton Road School in Hillsborough Township. It's the upper elementary school. I think it's fifth and sixth grade. You can see the school is surrounded by a lot of grassed area, lots of impervious cover, parking lots and building roofs, right? So we can zoom in on it a little bit, and we've identified some locations here. And let me just turn my pointer on so I can show you a little bit here. So in the back, we looked at this parking lot here. So this parking lot here can be captured in this green square here with a rain garden. This part of the parking lot can be captured in the island here, right? And this part of the parking lot drains to the back of the building. So the best thing we could do is maybe some porous pavement here to capture that water. Here, we do have this driveway here, which is where the buses go. So we really don't want to use porous asphalt here. Porous asphalt's a little bit softer than regular asphalt. We don't want buses driving on it on a regular basis, but we can capture that water in a long linear rain garden or bioswale here that would work. For this parking lot, because this island is so narrow here, we'd have to use some porous asphalt here. And then here we've got this parking lot drains to this front grassed area, and we could probably put 2 rain gardens in here to actually manage that. So these are kind of things we look at when we look at sites, and we can zoom in on some of these sites here and you can see it, see what we're talking about. What's nice about this site is it's down here, there's actually an inlet here, and we see the next picture, you can see the inlet here. So this is obviously a low spot. This whole parking lot drains to this area. So maybe this is a good spot to kind of capture the water, and we use that inlet as that overflow like we showed on that school site. We can look at the front part here, zoom in on that a little bit. This is that island between where the buses go and the teachers park. Now we actually went here and talked to the teachers. They don't really cut through this area. They'll walk all the way along the sidewalk and go in the main building so they don't interfere with the buses. So this is a great spot to put some sort of bioretention system. The only thing we'd have to worry about the light poles. There's probably underground wiring there, so we just have to be a little concerned about that. Here's an example of a site at a school in North Jersey. A lot of the schools have paved courtyards, so we thought, well, what if we took this site and we retrofitted it to look like this? So a lot of times we're taking photos and we're photoshopping them up of what it could look like. It's a great way to get people excited about doing these projects. So here's another one. This is a church in Pittsgrove. You can see there's 2 areas we quickly identified for rain gardens. Now, are these the only places rain gardens can go? Absolutely not. There's a lot of other places they can go, but these were 2 areas that we identified to be really low-hanging fruit, could be a quick project. So we actually have some renderings of this too. So we took a picture of before, and then we took a picture, well, we photoshopped it up in Adobe, and this is what it would look like after. So it gives people an idea of how this could look once the rain garden goes in. So we always do site visits. We never just go out and we never just kind of do stuff from the desk. We always have to go to the site and take a look at it. We have to identify where stormwater is going, where is it flowing, what direction is the slope, and how steep is it, where are the impervious surfaces on the site, the condition of the paved areas. We hate to go into a site and recommend converting it to porous asphalt when the site has already been newly paved. That would be kind of embarrassing. Maybe they can convert to porous asphalt in 10 years. We have to replace it, but for now, it's probably not a viable option. You want to understand these impervious surfaces are directly connected, or did they go off into the grassed area and get filtered on their own, or are they connected to the stormwater system that takes it right to the stream? There are opportunities to disconnect those connected impervious surfaces. We'd like to understand where the catch basins are. Those are usually the low spots, and maybe we can capture the stormwater before it reaches the catch basin and put it into a bioretention system or some other system. We also look for evidence of ponding on the site. Where's the water ponding in the parking lot or on the grassed area? Where are the utilities at? Are there any pedestrian safety issues? So a lot of times we want to put rain gardens at the end of the driveway. We want to be very careful not to block anybody's vision so a pedestrian doesn't get hit by a car. Other questions that we look at: do the soils infiltrate? The rain garden is designed to capture water and let it slowly soak into the ground. If you're in some of the places in New Jersey, like Burlington County is one place we have a lot of clay. We have to just make sure that the soils will take the water and infiltrate the water into the ground. Who owns the property, and are they willing to install a stormwater practice? We tried to do a project in North Jersey at an apartment complex, and they were very concerned about losing parking spaces. So we had to work the design around that, but they were interested in letting us install it. Just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to take up any parking space. That's very important too. We already talked a little bit about potential partners. Do you need permits for altering the site? So a lot of times we're not going to do rain gardens in the floodway. That kind of defeats the purpose. We want to capture the water before it gets to the floodway. So usually we're not working near wetlands or in the floodplain. But there are times when you might need local permits. Like one town required us to get a plumbing permit for cutting a downspout and putting it into a rain garden instead of letting the downspout continue to go into the stormwater system. Does the building have a basement? If it has a basement, we need to keep the practice far enough away from the building so water doesn't infiltrate into the basement. We talk about losing parking spaces already. One of the big questions is who's going to take care of the practice. So often when we're going to go into a site and do a practice, you want to have an agreement with that property owner that will come back the first year and help you take care of it. But after that, it's on you to weed it and trim the plants back and remulch it as necessary. The last one is a high priority site. Sometimes we look at sites because there's a lot of flooding downstream of the site, so it'd be great if we captured water here. Other times we look at a site and say, well, it's really not going to have a huge impact on downstream flooding, but it's in a high visibility spot. It's at a school. We can get a lot of parents involved in this, a lot of students involved in this. So it's a great educational opportunity. So that may make it a high priority site. Okay. We go in the field, we always bring, the aerial photograph, a tape measure, some sort of camera or your cell phone. Um, there's lots of tools out here that you can look at. We do have a green infrastructure guidance manual that we created. Talks a little bit about how identifying sites, a little bit about those practices. You can download this PDF from our website. There's a checklist in here that we have. If you go into a site, you can kind of go through the checklist and figure out, which practices might be best for the site. And that's all I have. So this is my contact information. Water.rutgers.edu is my website. We have a lot of great information on that website. You guys can feel free to jump on and check that out. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. I'm sorry that was really fast, but Avery told me to hurry it up, right?
Thank you, Chris. That was all great information. And this probably goes without saying, but implementation of these designs and projects is really paramount here in New Jersey because we live in a state with so much impervious cover or paved surfaces. So it's not only just pretty to look at with these things, they're highly functional, but they're also pretty to look at. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's great to see that a lot of towns and municipalities and public spaces and even private properties are moving in the direction of using these tools to our collective advantage. So thank you so much, Chris, for being here today.
Thank you.